What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I'm going to continue to examine 100 years of the greatest 150 black fighters of all times. And we're going to continue examining Ray Robinson's impact in the welterweight and the middleweight division. So we left off with Ray Robinson making a return comeback to boxing after he would lose the desire. And he didn't quite have what he needed other than his name in Hollywood. He would tap dance and he would go into show business and he would do various commercials. But it wasn't bringing in the income. It wasn't generating the revenue he was making as a boxer. So at this point in time, Ray Robinson didn't like boxing anymore. It wasn't in his heart, but he knew that was the only way to make money. So I mentioned to you in his second comeback fight, he would take on Ralph Tiger Jones. Ralph Tiger Jones was a spoiler. You had hundreds of them during those years. These guys would fight at the St. Nicholas Arena, Sunnyside Garden, Eastern Parkway. They would fight all over the place. Rocky Castellanis of the world. And that's why I say a lot of these guys today, the GGGs, they would be 8-round fighters back then because you had too many fighters. And they were all good. But one didn't really outshine the other because they were all that way. And they were spread out all over the place. So when you have fighters today, it was just one of them. It makes it look like they are the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if you put them back in the 50s and the 40s, you probably wouldn't hear of them as you don't know too much about Ralph Tiger Jones. You don't know too much about Rocky Castellani or Gil Turner and others. But he would have been in that mix. He'd have been picked off several times because these guys came to fight. So we're looking at December 9th, 1955. Ray Robinson would knock out Carl Bobo Olsen in the second round. January 2nd, 1957, he would take on Gene Foreman. And he would win a fight with Gene Foreman, but Gene Foreman would take the title away from Ray Robinson. And this began to irritate a lot of people because they thought it was one of those fights where you would win one and I would win one, and you would lose one and I would lose one, kind of a thing. Because that's what began to happen in Ray Robinson's fights. But on May 1st, 1957, Ray Robinson would win back his title. He would knock out Gene Foreman in the fourth round. He would hit him with the most famous photo that you can find of Gene Foreman in a staggering position. And you would catch Ray Robinson in that shot with his arm in somewhat of a 45 position. He just delivered one of the greatest left hook knockouts in all of boxing. Hit him as he was backing up. And that showed the greatness of Ray Robinson. It's against gravity. You'll never see that again unless you come across a special fighter like Ray Robinson. But on September 23rd, 1957, he would lose to Carmen Basilio. Carmen Basilio would win the title. 15 rounds. New York. And when Carmen Basilio faced Ray Robinson, he had moved up from the welterweight division. He was a 2-time welterweight champion. Because he faced Tony DeMarco twice. It was a 2-second difference between both fights. Basilio knocked out DeMarco twice. Syracuse was the last time they fought. And then he would take on Johnny Saxton. He felt he was robbed in the first fight. But he would defeat Saxton in the second fight. So Carmen Basilio would move out of the welterweight division. He would relinquish and vacate his crown. It was at that point you would have a welterweight tournament. Now in that welterweight tournament, you had Izzy Logart, Virgil Akins, and Casper Ortega. Then you had Vince Martinez, Gil Turner, and George Barnes. That was the welterweight tournament, when Carmen Basilio would move up in the rankings. And he would challenge for the middleweight championship belt. Now at this point, March 25th, 1958, Ray Robinson would defeat Carmen Basilio. 15 rounds, but he would give Carmen Basilio a beating of his life. He would give him the business. Carmen Basilio was very tough Italian fighter. I met Carmen Basilio, Jake LaMotta, all of them guys, and Carmen Basilio didn't like Ray Robinson worth a damn. He didn't give a damn about Ray Robinson. They had a personal vendetta over them. It was more Carmen Basilio not liking Robinson than Robinson not liking Basilio. But I spoke to Carmen Basilio, had good conversations with Basilio. And he told me about how life was during his time and how it was for the men during his time. And that's why I say the character of man then is different than what it is now. It's just what it is. There's nothing to debate about. And that makes for different quality of fighters. And that's why the era then was stronger than what it is now. Had nothing to do, it's nothing personal. It is what it is. Conversation is not even, you don't have a conversation with something like that because that's what it is. So August 28th, 1959, the NBA would vacate Ray Robinson's title and Gene Foreman would take on Carmen Basilio. And Basilio would be stopped for the first time. Now, what happened? Ray Robinson did not face Gene Foreman as he was supposed to. Gene Foreman wound up fighting Benny Kid Paret. And when he faced Benny Kid Paret, he beat Benny Kid Paret half to death. Now, this is in 61, and jumping a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm giving you an idea of what started to happen. So in 1960, Ray Robinson would face Paul Pender, and the NBA would strip Ray Robinson from the title, the NBA version of it, because he didn't defend his title against Gene Foreman. But the problem was, Ray Robinson would have a rematch with Paul Pender, but he would lose for the second time in Boston. That has never happened to Ray Robinson before. Ray Robinson has always regained his title after he had lost it. And this caused a lot of problems. This was January 22nd, 1960. July 11th, 1961, Terry Downs would win the title by stopping Paul Pender after 9 rounds in London, England. April 7th, 1962, Paul Pender would regain his title by defeating Terry Downs in Boston, Massachusetts. October 23rd, 1962, Dick Tiger would win the WBA title by winning a unanimous 15-round decision over Gene Foreman in San Francisco, California. What a fight that was, my God. See, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to boxing. Historically, you had a lot of great matches. But the best always fought the best. It was no question. It was normal. And you saw the fights that I can now talk about. Curtis and I can talk about. Hardline boxing can I talk about. But you can't have those conversations today. Because you're not getting the fights that are so normal to happen. With the fights and two men who are equal quality fighting each other. November 9th, 1962, it was announced that the New York Athletic Commission, and the British Boxing Board of Control, and the European Boxing Union will withdraw recognition of Paul Pender as the middleweight champion. And now Dick Tiger will be recognized as the world champion. November 12th, Paul Pender had filed suit with the State Athletic Commission. He would lose that case, so he would then retire. The impact that Ray Robinson had, the welterweight and middleweight division, was amazing because Ray Robinson, many times, the night of the fight, would pull out He dictated the terms. He dictated how much money. He dictated where they were going to fight. And that was the first time a black man had created that much power for himself. Didn't happen with Joe Louis. Didn't happen with John Henry Lewis. Didn't happen with Henry Armstrong. It didn't happen with Sam Langford. It did happen with Jack Johnson. And now it happens with Floyd Mayweather. So Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. 100 years. The greatest 150 black fighters of all times. On behalf of my brother Curtis Anderson and myself, I want to thank you for viewing these videos. And continue to watch this fight series.